kindly given up some time for us to come and talk to us about his experience within the industry. He is the ex-Chief Supply Chain Officer for the PVH Group. He's also held many other positions within the industry. He has a wealth of knowledge. I'm delighted that he's here to talk to us today about the way he sees the industry. So I'm not going to introduce him any further than that. I'm just going to simply hand over to him and ask him to come up. There is a microphone there, Bill, for you. The clicker seems to be working now.
Great,
so
thank you.
Really delighted to have you here. Please put your hands together for Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, it's been a while since I've done something like this, and I could have done with Kornit this morning as I put on all my trousers and realized none of them fitted from the last time I wore them. So bear with me. It's puppy fat. It will come off. So this is a huge subject that we're going to try and hit. And I'm going to try and cover this in 20 minutes. I will do nothing more than give you a flavor of what may be possible out there. But hopefully you enjoy it. If you have any questions later, you can always reach out and ask me in more detail. There is a caveat that I want to get in before this. I have a tendency when I present to be extreme. So if you think he's over the top, I'm doing it for a reason. I'm trying to stress a point, so bear with me in it. And I think the second thing I would say to you is that today's current supply chains are excellent. Nothing about what I am presenting up here is in any way derogatory or meant to be derogatory to the current suppliers. I was a supplier, spent first half of my career supplying Marks & Spencer's 100% here in the UK, and spent another 10 years in China, all through the 90s, building them out there. And I have to tell you, the supply chains in general that are out there today exceed anything that I was ever able to do. What I'm talking about today is how do you complement those supply chains that are out there to solve some of the industry problems that are in front of us. So with that, I will bash through it. So are you and your partners ready for agile and ready for the future? It's not just about agility, it's about sustainability for me as well. And anybody that looks at LinkedIn, that's my big focus now, is how do you take the supply chains that we've got, not only make them more profitable than they are for the retailers, but also address sustainability out there. This is a not so famous quote. At no time in history has the last consumer willing to pay full price for an item walked into a store and found the last item available at full price. That absolute crosshair match of a customer wanting a style, a SKU, and that last SKU available to that customer, that has never matched. That has never been the case in history, and yet for the last 30 years, we have actually amplified the difficulty of that by stretching and extending supply chains further and further away from the end consumer. So as if a global pandemic that we've all just coming through, however you want to think about it, wasn't enough. There were problems that we were dealing with before that even arrived. We had escalating trade wars going on around the world and continue to go on around the world. The consumers went digital. I think one of the things the pandemic did was they didn't change the consumer behavior. They accelerated consumer behavior and took, the kind of most steadfast brick and mortar retail shopper and said, you don't get to do that anymore. You have to buy online. It forced them to have that experience. And it shocked them to find out that it was actually quite a pleasant experience. I didn't have to get in the car and go someplace. I didn't have to carry heavy bags back. Someone would actually deliver whatever I wanted to my door. And I now had access to any fashion, any style, any brand, at any time of day, anywhere in the world through my tablet. They went digital. Step change in environmental awareness. I have to say, I'm a bit of a skeptic on how much the consumer cares about sustainability and sustainable awareness of that consumer. Look, I always would challenge this group in this room. Think of the clothes that you are wearing right now, and how much time did you individually spend figuring out where was the cotton grown, were the people paid properly that made those goods? Was it sustainable or not? You didn't do that. You saw something you liked, you saw something you needed, and you bought it. I think what you also did is you hoped that the company that organized and made those goods was doing it for the right reasons, so you could feel comfortable making that purchase, but you didn't personally check it out. So my view is there is a step change in environmental awareness, but I think it's coming more at governmental and organizational level than it is at consumer level. No one should be holding their breath, waiting for the consumer to change their behavior. And there are rises, we see the rise of amazing companies just now who are able to respond to fashion instantly, who are just taking the world by storm, but are not sustainable. At least part of it is not sustainable. Labor costs are rising, evils of inventory, and again, I think the pandemic just shone a big shiny light on that, the lack of inventory and the inability to get the inventory you wanted through the supply chains that you had, but maybe more importantly, the amount of inventory you now had that nobody wanted anymore that was piled up in your warehouse and actually jammed the whole flow. Inventory is evil. You should have zero inventory at any moment in time. That should be the aspiration, and anything off that aspiration should be the minimum needed to keep your business flowing. And compliance challenges, Xinjiang is always a great example of that, but that will continue to raise. But we're through the pandemic. I think we're through most of it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the world supply chains will go back to normal and the world will all be perfect again. Except we now got a war in Ukraine. Except we have problems in Sri Lanka, an amazing country with amazing suppliers, and we have a problem there. Except we have lockdowns in China. I would suggest anybody holding their breath, waiting for it all to fix itself and go back to the way it was, you will die. You will die holding your breath, waiting for that to happen. It is not going to happen. The world has changed, global supply chains have changed, and we are in the most dramatic shift on that we have seen, certainly in my 30-year history of working overseas. However, look at it from a different lens, because that sounded pretty sad and pretty depressing. Look at it from the other side and read this differently. These actual challenges create opportunities for us to go actually make our businesses better. Out of stock product, $1 trillion a year of opportunity sitting on the table for retailers to go get and bring that into their businesses. I worked for the world's largest retailer, head of supply for part of the divisions of one of the world's largest retailers based in Bentonville, Arkansas. We had approximately a 12% out of stock. Doesn't sound like a lot. You do the math on that to a $500 billion retailer and look at the amount of business that was walking away simply because they couldn't put the product in front of the consumer when their hand reached out to purchase it. They didn't have the supply chains. By the way, great company, one of the most aspirational companies you'll ever work for if you get a chance. On the other side of that, not having enough, now I've got markdowns. And by markdowns, I mean anything that you have to discount the price on from its full price value because the consumer isn't willing to pay that full price value. I can take you to my wardrobe, not that you'd want to come, but I could take you to my wardrobe and show you items I have in my wardrobe that I bought because they were discounted, but I have never worn them yet. But it was so attractive to me, I went and purchased them. Markdowns, $300 billion worth of lost sales in the US as a consequence of markdowns or liquidations because I had to buy stuff that the consumer was not willing to pay for. However, it's also, and this is something that I think most people miss, when you over-order, it is the second largest contributor to apparel waste in the whole system. If you solve that, if you just ordered what the customer wanted, so you never had a markdown, you would probably go halfway to solving any target carbon footprint reductions that you personally have. So markdowns, one side, other side, excess inventory. H&M, great company. I just pulled their number because they happened to publish it at the time. But H&M, $4.3 billion of unsold inventory to clear from their warehouse. That would interpret through to any other company. Apparel waste. Massive problem for our industry. It's shocking, the pictures that we've all seen in Chile Chile and Ghana and other places around the world where beaches are being polluted by the stuff that we made that we didn't sell or customers ended up no longer wearing, and it was shipped off to there and packaged up. Huge opportunity to solve it. And if you actually look at it the other way around right now, and there's a big initiative in West Africa called the Mass Regeneration Zone where people are working to solve this, it actually becomes the largest free commodity to the apparel industry if you could actually use that, turn it back into fibers, turn it back into product that's out there. Growth of customization, big initiative that's coming on. People are looking for unique, they want unique, and circularity. Largest growing segment of the industry, growing at 39% a year, where full price apparel is actually declining at 1% a year. Now, clearly these are off at vastly different scales from each other, but nonetheless, one is growing, resale, one is declining, full price apparel. So let me just stay there for a second. So there'll be people in here that'll say, okay, so what? Because I'm going to lead to onshoring and what onshoring means. So people say, so what? I could solve all of this. I'm incredibly fast through the suppliers that I have offshore. I have offshore suppliers in Sri Lanka and China and Vietnam who can turn goods in 24 hours and send them to us. Except they have to go by air. And look, I would hold my hand up as absolutely guilty for air as head of supply chain at Victoria's Secret. That was the model. It was an air model, and not because we deliberately set out to damage the planet. It just was the model that we had in place, and we were ignorant at that time. We are no longer ignorant today. So people can solve this. I can respond instantly. Air is fast. Except, one, air is incredibly expensive today for those that are using it today. But there's another aspect to air. You cannot possibly put up on your websites, if you're a retailer or brand, that you are committed in any way to sustainability in air garments. Now, the caveat is we all have to air at times because of unexpected circumstances, but if your speed capability is built on an air capability, then just pull your website down on any claims of being sustainable, because you can't be. When you transport by sea and you look at the whole carbon footprint of an item, on average, obviously we all know that the consumer end use today is the largest that's out there. Transportation by sea is relatively small at 1%. You ship it by air, you completely change that dynamic. You literally blow up all your targets to achieve carbon. And many have been blown up. It is no secret that Gap announced that in the last quarter of last year, they spent $70 million more, so in addition to whatever they had planned, to air goods in to meet their customers' needs. They needed to do it. I would have done it. But you don't claim sustainability. It absolutely kills. And by the way, that 43% is a number that I chose on the low side. You can look on different websites that will take that up to 50% up there. So look, so what do you do about it, right? That's great, doom and gloom, big opportunity. Yeah, but what do I get up and do next to actually go achieve this? So the first one is, let's all look in the mirror, right? Because all too often there's a tendency to say, well, if supply chain would fix itself, that's what the brands would say. That supply chain needs to go fix itself, be faster. Equally, on the other side, you would have manufacturers who'd say, well, these retailers need to change their behavior. They need to start to do things differently out there. So look, it's more of a front two. It's not about changing the supply chain. It's rewiring the whole end-to-end process. Rewiring the business, rewiring our own thinking, everyone's thinking. So the primary, so again, manufacturer for half of my career, and the primary discussion beyond the initial designs that I was given to do was, what is the first cost, and how do I achieve my IMU, my initial markup target? That was it. That was the discussion. That was sometimes the threat of business going someplace else. That was the control point that brands and retailers used. That has to change. We have to move over to program profitability. And if you think they're the same, they are Absolutely not. And that is now proven and documented that those are two very different things, that we damage program profitability by actually our fixation on first cost and IMU. Sell-throughs. What the heck, have we got a KPI out there for anyone to say that a 75 to an 85 sell-through on a program is acceptable? It is shocking. It is absolutely shocking. KPIs should be set at 100%. That's the target, that initial statement. Last customer willing to pay full price, last garment available at full price. That's the target, that's the KPI. Anything short of that is a fail, could be better. But we've got to move away from that. And as a supply chain person, right, my eternal whine in the world of designs over developing, designs over developing, designers over developing, they're putting too much stuff out there. That has to go out. That's got to be a rewiring for people like me, and it's got to be more of a continuous design and test or edit. And I think that's, when you think of this event and what this event brings to the table, it's exactly that. It's the opportunity in real time to design and design and design, and stop trying to merchandise. Stop trying to think that we know better than the customer what they want. Get the stuff in front of them. Let them tell you what the answer is, and then respond to that customer need. MOQs, minimum order quantity. Probably one of the worst terms that was ever brought into the apparel industry. It is completely fictitious. It's completely unreal. I personally used it to bamboozle people with it. It is wrong. The right term is optimal order quantity. What is it you need? I could make 1, I could make 10, I could make 1,000. What is the optimal order quantity? And I have seen businesses that I have been part of order extra goods just to hit an MOQ instead of ordering exactly what they wanted and paying slightly more, missing the markdowns, missing the liquidation, saving their businesses. POs is another one. Why do we have POs? Biggest what I call speed bump in our business. SKU level POs calculated 4 or 5 months in advance, thrown out there, and we keep our fingers crossed that what we believe the customer would want 4 or 5 months ago, when it turns up and it goes into the store, that's exactly what they want. And that has never been the case. If it's a good item, they always wanted more. If it's a dog, it's a dog. And they didn't want it at all. And what you've got to move to is what's called data-driven dynamic flow. This idea that you get rid of purchase orders and you start to connect your consumers' responses directly to your tier 1 manufacturers and let them figure out what to make, where to make it, and how to flow it to you just to meet demand requirements. And then, look, lastly, just a recognition that, and again, this is an exaggeration to make a point, sometimes we think we are victims of the supply chain that exists out there. Can't get it fast enough, got too much coming at me, had to place an order that was too big. We really have to move to be the architects of your supply chain. And that's where I think brands and retailers have a real requirement to lean into what's going on in the world, because it is changing. And it is changing quickly, dramatically, but you are not part of it if you are not engaged in the discussion. And so what will come out of that is what people believed you wanted, not necessarily what you actually needed. Get in the driver's seat, become supply chain architects. People are doing it. People have tried it. There are many people on this, big companies, big players, people that I have incredible respect for in this. Companies that have helped me do stuff, Under Armour, Nike, that have helped PVH engage and do activities that they couldn't otherwise do on their own. But there's lessons from every one of these onshoring attempts that we get out of it. That top one, if your focus continues to be, and your only kind of tool in your toolbox is to talk about first cost and IMU, you are not going to be fast ever. You got to change that so that per unit margin is not the top priority of goal of your discussion. If you start to think of bringing stuff onshore, Don't think of it as a separate piece to your offshore. It is complementary. So your onshore and offshore partners are exactly the same people, and they're willing to be part of it. Now, there are great onshore manufacturers who, if you are in the room, I would highly encourage you to create a buddy system with great offshore manufacturers to say, how do I become your quick response, fast response capability here to the stuff that you're making offshore? Do not onshore your core production. People have failed on that. Some of the largest players on there failed as a result of that. Designers and manufacturers in the same building. I'm going to talk to that a little bit later. But create that synergy and be very deliberate on which products you onshore. It's not everything. It's not a whole style. And again, that's where I see some mistakes being made where people are thinking, well, I'll bring that category back. That's not the way to think of it. Let me try to give a little bit more color on that. This is kind of more the traditional supply chain. Retail, very far away, US, Europe, although they are there, but US, Europe, typically playing in this part of the world, Asia, India, kind of the India subcontinent, playing in that region of the world, long supply chains, big bets getting placed, and typically a big bet means an over bet. I'm going to place a little bit more just in case there's an upside there, which creates all these markdowns that I have. But typically POs 4 to 6 months, design all the way through to delivery 6 to 12 months, depending on how fast you are. But you're in that range, and again, unless you're using air, you're in that range. And I refer to that as low cost, slow to market, in a time where the consumer is getting faster and faster and faster, no longer driven by your marketing, no longer driven by what you tell them to buy, which is how it used to be, now driven by 16-year-olds or 12-year-olds on TikTok or social media who they're responding to almost immediately. Now, it's not to say brand marketing isn't good. It absolutely is, but it's a halo. It creates the halo effect of the business. It does not drive individual SKU level products in the apparel world. That has been taken away from us. That has now gone over to a different group. And that's why right now there is so much focus, and you'll hear it on the demand side, demand sensing, big topic, demand sensing. What's the consumer doing? What's the data telling us out there? We've got all this vast amounts of data from social media that tell us about this. Except you take that and you try to stick it down the same old supply chain that has been there for the last 30 years and somehow expect to get a different response. It ain't gonna happen, and you'll have spent a whole load of money getting yourselves even more frustrated because you now know what you're missing, but you no longer can react to it. So the key to that is to start to rethink and start to think about layers of supply chain. And that's why we refer to this as the MDDO supply network, multi-dimensional, dynamically optimized network. And all it means is that the supply chain, and just imagine for a second this is an individual supplier, actually lives in 2 or 3 environments. Offshore, low and slow. Nearshore, high and fast. Onshore, express. You'll never be out. You'll never miss something. You can respond to it in days out of here. And you can see how the times change at the bottom. But again, I want to keep it real. You're not moving everything nearshore. You're not moving everything onshore. I would estimate at best 10%, maybe plus slightly, is what you are moving onshore with it. I just want to hit a highlight there. One of today's biggest challenges that I see to actually pull this off is there is no planning tool that I am aware of in the industry today that allows MDDO to work. The idea that there's a planning tool that's continually figuring out offshore, nearshore, or onshore, which cost metric is time to market, and flows the data, not a PO, POs are gone, flows the data to the manufacturer so they can make it and ship it directly to where you need it. There is no tool that dynamic in our industry today, so we are burdened with tools that roll things up in a PO form and throw them out there. So now take it to some metrics that you've got here. So you've got offshore, nearshore, onshore, offshore, cost, great. However, got to hold a lot of inventory. Fill rates relatively low, markdowns relatively high, although you wouldn't think so because we've become so used to them today, but that's what they are. And a maintained margin that's relatively low because we eat a lot of it up through lost sales and through having to mark stuff down from what we could. So the difference between an IMU and an MMU today is a pretty large number. Nearshore, it gets a little bit better, but if I just jump to onshore, what you see on the onshore side is it is more expensive. And I think if anybody that comes to a conversation that says, well, I'm going to get the same price onshore as I get offshore, leave the room. Right? That is not going to happen, at least not anytime soon, although there are ways to solve for it longer term. But not anywhere soon are you going to get there. So be comfortable with it being more expensive. But now you've got zero inventory, higher full price sales, zero lost sales, zero markdowns on anything that's coming through that, and you've got a high maintained margin. But again, I want to be clear, it's not about one or the other. It's not about choosing which of those columns to use. It's more about how do I use each of those three columns together to actually drive the profitability of my organization. So step one, MDDO, multi-dimensional dynamic optimization. No longer is it this jacket costs $20 made in China. It's this jacket costs $20 made in China, $15 made in Egypt, and it's $20 or $30 made in the UK. And now I'm thinking of one style, three different costs, three different time frames, and trying to figure out the exact way to do that. It's hard, but if you're going to win in today's world, that's the world that we got to move to. Step two is build one of these. Pretty easy, just a bunch of buildings. I will not get through this part of a presentation. This in itself is a 1-hour discussion on it, but I am going to hit the highlights of it. What the foundational parts of the eco park is that raw materials come into the UK from offshore into what we call leveraged warehouses and leveraged cutting rooms. Now, I use the word leverage because one of the biggest challenges if you're a manufacturer is having to buy expensive cutting equipment and expensive advanced machine manufacturing equipment. And if collectively people can work together to buy that stuff collectively, suddenly that, number one, spreads the cost significantly, so lowers and addresses the cost issue in the UK, but it also frees up the manufacturing units that are actually going to make your goods, your quick-turn goods, because on average, 1/3 of every manufacturing facility's production space is lost to that front-end cutting, warehousing, and advanced machine manufacturing capability. But it's basically a flow, raw materials in, passes through an express environment, goes out directly to the consumer. Okay, so no longer going to warehouses, it's either directly to a store, directly to a consumer, takes out the friction, takes out the bumps that we've all learned so well to put into place, goes into the e-com environment. It starts to address other issues in our industry as well. What it starts to do is it says, but what about all the e-com returns that are coming back that maybe they've taken out their packaging, they've ripped the labels off, maybe even they've taken a button off or something. And those typically, God, I could go on forever. Think of every outbound truck of Amazon that comes to your door and drops a package, but doesn't pick anything up. It goes back empty. So think of all the trucks on the road today that are outbound full, backbound empty. And in this world, it suggests changing that to say every outbound truck is actually a truck that collects stuff from the consumers or a warehouse or a store and returns it back to the eco park where it goes into an e-com refurbishment environment for all retailers. And I'll use the UK as an example. I could use the US, but we're in the UK. I'll use that as the example. That would be an environment that all the big retailers in the UK had lined up to say, yeah, that suits us, that benefits us. That's not a competitive environment. That's a pre-competitive world that we're in. I just want my stuff clean, fixed, and back into the system, and I want it done as efficiently and effectively as possible. I'm prepared to work with everyone else to get that set up, lower the cost, improve the process, take all the carbon footprint out of the flow of goods coming back. In addition, I get the same benefit on acquisition of second-hand goods. probably one of the biggest challenges that retailers face today as they try to collect back used product is acquisition. Only 15% of product actually gets acquired back in today's world. The vast majority of it still is going to landfill, and we've got to do a better job of taking the friction out of the system by working together. So those same vans coming back to the park, resale, recycle, sort it, clean it, get it back into the system. You'll see a little boat here. That little boat goes offshore to places like West Africa into the mass regeneration zones that are taking back the stuff that can't be fixed, and they're passing it back into huge recycling processes. In the middle of it is the jewel in the crown, what I call the Collaborative Innovation Center, and I have one shot of that. What does the Eco Park do, right? It really addresses the consumer's responsiveness that we've really been, a lot of what these events are about. Accelerates innovation. It allows us to test the market and react to the consumer, produce on demand. It allows us to go circular. Ship and return is included in it in an efficient way, not an inefficient way that we have today. Customization can be done within the Eco Park itself. Innovation and small bulk runs. So there's producing on demand, so someone's placed an order, or there's producing to demand. I now know exactly what people are buying and let me continue to flow that in, as opposed to producing to a wish, vision, some future view, which is what most of us do today. The value statements, right, just to get those out of the way early. Eco Park and MDDO, when you actually bring those two things together and you now have this network of offshore, onshore, working effectively to just make what the consumer needs, because again, offshore, critical, mainstay of your business. But when you actually get them working right, we've shown there's a 200 basis point opportunity in incremental margin, business margin. And the reason I say business margin, it's not just the 200 basis point increase is not just on the stuff made in the park, it's on the whole business has a 200 basis point increase. And I could tell you that coming from retail, there's nothing I can think of recently puts in front of you an opportunity to lift your margin by 200 basis points, other than get a bigger baseball bat and go beat the suppliers over the head with it to see if there's anything flushes out there. What it also does is it takes out the system waste. Approximately 20% of everything we order today is waste. We overorder it, we hope they buy it, they don't, we regret not ordering more of the right stuff, and we ultimately end up having to liquidate this stuff. And if we could change the whole mindset, 20% of the stuff goes away, and we turn that into more product at full price. 30% reduction in DC inventories. I don't have to hold 10 weeks because I can't figure out what the customer's really going to buy. I can make it as they need it, lower that inventory, turn it into cash, invest in stuff that I really need. It enables the resale market and it feeds the offshore mass regeneration zone. Where this gets hard in discussions is when you've got 5 brands in a room or 5 retailers in a room and you're trying to persuade everyone to come and work together on this, is there's an immediate, well, first of all, I'm busy with all the headaches I've got today, and you're talking about stuff in the future. But if I don't start it today, there is no future. But also, what's the competitive element and how does that work when I've got 5 other players in the room? And it's a bit of a hybrid, right? There are things about the Eco Park that actually amplify the brands and retailers' capability. I can design and develop in real time, right? That's yours. That's your business. It's your product. It's what you're going to do. I can test those concepts locally through the Eco Park, in the local environment, register whether the customer does social media pick it up, does anybody like it out there, but still react globally to reduce the cost offshore. Now I've got a better understanding of it. Pulse fashion, just don't look stupid. Don't look stupid in social media. Always be on the fashion edge of it, right? Never be behind TikTok, where some kid has put your stuff up there and you're apologizing. I think American Eagle did that, right? About a year ago, where they had to apologize on social media. 16-year-old had put a product up. And they put up that it would take them 3 months, I think, to get back into stock on that item. Whereas if they had something like this, that would never be the case. Read and react to market. Actually place your seasonal buys offshore. You don't have to test everything. Some of it is pretty predictable. Test stuff offshore, bring it in, and then react somewhere between onshore and offshore. So instead of place 100% of what you think might just be possible, place 70%, bring it in, start to sell it, then react to what you absolutely want. Produce on demand, to demand, zero waste. And this whole idea of customizing as that grows, the ability to offer people a product, and it's not necessarily a completely different product, it could be a core product, but customized to their needs so it meets what they want, which again is a growing segment of the market. But there are places to collaborate. E-commerce returns, collaborate. Resale, collaborate at least on the take-back process on it. Have a green crypto coin that allows a consumer that brings it back to get some small credit, but then use it at any retailer within the UK. Recycle and regeneration, right? So passing it through environmental incubator. So the idea of brands coming together, brand CR teams coming together, special interest groups coming together to brainstorm about what are we struggling with today? What do we need to go solve for? Pre-competitive, solve for, and then collectively get out there and support startups actually go do this stuff. Again, a real tendency in the retail side, and I was there for a long time, on the retail side to say, well, once you have something, come and talk to me and I'll come and have a look at it. Well, it's like, really? Unless you actually engage with me in the process of building it, there is nothing to come and look at. I need you at the table. I need you to do it. The jewel in the crown, the opportunity at the local level for designers in the UK or in the US or in Europe to work locally with their own tier one suppliers on designing and developing in a week instead of months after months. Design and develop, have standing beside them the advanced machine manufacturers, helping them solve for the problems that they need for the future in the same building, a meeting space to collaborate, and an innovation incubator specifically focused on the apparel industry, where everyone is working together, is what's needed to really accelerate this. It always feels that the world is changing, the environment is changing, and we are about 2 miles behind that on a curve line. And we know it's happening, we're just not getting there fast enough. This picture, by the way, is a picture that comes from a place called Ennis, or it was built off Ennis. It's actually in Strathclyde. And it's actually Rolls-Royce set this up, and the building is spectacular, better than any pyramid, glass pyramid. If you get a chance to go have a look at it, you should, but Rolls-Royce did this for aviation, where they brought everybody together to brainstorm, and it's just amazing to go see the problems that they are collectively solving now. Build it right. If you're going to build the eco park, build it right. Make sure renewable energy, all the right stuff. So as you build forward, don't repeat the failures of the past, and don't just solve for today. Connect the dots over the horizon and start to say, but what will I need once this is actually all in place? This will not happen unless everybody gets together. It's that simple. There's a lot of amazing work going on, and I applaud everybody that's out there onshoring. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in Europe, we see it happening in the US. It is fantastic, but it's almost being done one company at a time with one partner at a time, and it's not fast enough, it's challenging, and it's not solving the big issues. Bringing all of these people together allows us not only to accelerate the work, but to actually develop far better solutions than we have today. The capability exists, the financials work, it delivers on sustainability commitments. Every one of your tier one suppliers, every tier one supplier that is here today, a strategic partner, is more than capable of delivering on this. And anybody that's an onshore manufacturer is already there ready to partner up with some of those players. Advanced machine manufacturers, the Genealogia, Gerber, Lectra, Twine, Kornit. I know these guys scratch their head every day and kind of say, what is holding people back from this? And all that's holding us back is 30 years of doing it the way we did it. And if you are, I don't apply to this, but if you are under 50 years old, you've only done it the way that we're doing it today. If you are over 50 years old, you actually remember the way we do it today never existed. It somewhat harkens back to this, but I wouldn't take it back to where it was. I'd advance it into a new future. I'd be remiss if I didn't touch this. We're terrible.
Bill,
because I'm finished.
I'm going to have to, because we've got to, it's so much to get through. I'll give you just 2 minutes to summarize if you can, just to, the importance of clearly we understand. So why don't you
So I started on a low. Hopefully I took it to a high, and I'm now going to bring it back to a low, right? That is what our fashion that we promote and social media promotes every day ends up looking like. And that could be Chile, Pakistan, Africa. That is the mass regeneration zone that we're looking to build in West Africa to actually start to solve for these problems at scale. Everyone is doing an amazing job. If we all work together, we can create things like this. With that, I'm done. I knew I would take too much time, so thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. No, not at all. As you can see, very passionate. I'm going to just jump through because there we are. Fantastic. So, look, we're not going to solve the world's problems and the industry's problems within a 20 or 25-minute keynote, but I think you'll see there's lots that we can do, which is why Kornit is having this event and these keynotes and these panels. If you're here for the fashion show for Love Hero coming up shortly, you are in the right place. This is also a business meeting and a business discussion, an industry discussion about the challenges and the issues within our fashion industry. I'm delighted to introduce Simon Platts, who's the Commercial ESG and Sustainability Director with ASOS, who's going to take around 10 or 15 minutes before we go into the panels. So hang fire, it's interesting, ask questions, you'll get the opportunity. Simon, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Really sucking it in there, look. That was before lockdown, I think. Okay, thank you. I kind of want to just say what he said. Thank you. I mean, literally, and I've obviously, because we are a little bit short on time, I've just tweaked a few things rather than just go over everything Bill said, but actually what Bill said, you know, these are the opportunities and these are the things that we're going to need to do to change our industry. So what I was going to do now is just talk a little bit about how ASOS is trying to tackle these issues within the industry. We have, for those of you that don't know, we're a platform. We sell brands. So just over half of what ASOS sells will be third-party brands. So it could be Nike, Adidas, Timberland, and so on. Just under half are the ASOS brands, which now, as probably you know, include things like Collusion, As You, Topshop, Topman, and Miss Selfridge, as well as ASOS Design. Now, last September, we relaunched our commitments on what we call Fashion with Integrity. We've had that for 10 years, and that's been how we've been tackling issues. It's been various different initiatives we've been involved in, charity work. But I wanted to reset it within the business around the products, hence the commercial in the title there. So we set ourselves 4 pillars. We've got our carbon footprint. We've got transparency, because without transparency, how are you going to know where you are, what you're doing, and then how are you going to do things better? We've got circular, which the word our industry is talking about, but very much the relevant word. And I'll just talk a little bit about that. And then within ASOS, we also have our diversity pillar as well. Now, just talking about onshoring, nearshoring, that smarter needle. I think, yeah, I'm not going to go over Bill's slides again, but just to look at this model and look at what it's saying about inventory and cost and margin, an intake margin, an exit margin, or net margin, or rolling margin, realized margin, all these different terminologies. And when me and Bill were chatting last week, we were talking about, and he touched on it there at the end, you know, what does it take for us to really move this on? And it's not exactly a leap of faith, because that's fact. That is happening. But it's that balance. And it's that balance in what is a very stressed industry at the moment, where people are fighting to keep the lights on. Bill talked about using the word sustainable. You know, we're trying to be more responsible at ASOS and kind of stop using the word sustainable, because we have air freighted. We don't plan for it, because as Bill mentions, it's very destructive from a profitability point of view and also from an environmental point of view. However, we are using it, but we're using it because we're getting things wrong. And these are the things that we want to put right. So that speed to market, you know, if we can unlock that speed to market, we know there's investment. I think, again, anyone who's involved in the fashion industry will know that our industry is very inefficient. And if you're inefficient, you're in effect wasting money. So we need to smarten up. We need to be more efficient. We need to generate that profit. We need to stop referring to products as waste. We need to see it as opportunistic and to reinvest. Hence the circular model. If you start at 12 o'clock, what you're putting out into the world needs to be better and needs to be considered. Considered how it can be used, how it can be utilized, bring the customer on that journey in terms of how they are, where their responsibilities lie in terms of the product and looking after that product. We need to make it easier for it to be recovered. The parks is one thing as well that fits into that. We need to be able to deconstruct it easily. We can't be, you know, we talk about monomateriality. Now, I don't envisage the world moving towards single materials, because we want choice and we want different materials for different functionality. But being able to deconstruct it with more ease and bring it back in and then go around to 12 o'clock and start again is where we've got to get to. And we've got to do that with transparency, because, you know, if we don't, as I say, if we don't know where we're standing, then we don't know what damage we're doing. So, you know, we made a commitment that we'll map right the way through our supply chain. And it's very complex. It's very opaque. It's very difficult and hard to work out. But there is technology, and that gets me to this bit and to talk a little bit maybe around what we're here seeing today, and that's new, innovative technologies. There are lots of things that are coming through. There are lots of things that are there now, and there are lots of things that are coming through in our industry that are going to help us get to that ambition of a better profit margin, lower inventory, less markdown, and the ability to give the customer what they want, where they want it, when they want it, and do it in a transparent and more sustainable way. But there's a journey to go on, and we're just, you know, even though we're a 20-year-old business, we're just sort of rekindling, if you like, our journey towards that and what we need to do. And within our Fashion with Integrity commitments, we've said we want to do that in the public space. So we've put out what our ambitions are, and we're going to review them annually. Now, I've been working with Chris and Scott and Ronen now for a couple of years, well, just under a couple of years. And we have, and I think some of you may see it today, worked together with the guys on one of the digital printing machines. In fact, there's several up there now, up in Haringey at one of the factories that we've worked with for many, many years with Jenny at Fashion Enter. And when we first had the conversation about this machine, which, you know, again, Bill touched on it, these machines aren't cheap. However, the investment and then the return you're going to get on that investment, we knew the opportunities were going to be there. We've worked with it. We've used it on ASOS product. We've done small orders. We don't talk trial and repeat, but it's almost kind of, you know, being able to sort of, well, let's just test, because we know we have a very reactive customer, but let us just test this and let's see how far we get. And then once you start to get a bite, you're able to go again and keep yourself in stock. So you're not missing sales. I remember back in the day, years and years ago, I used to work for a company called Next, and the boss there back then, he's still the boss today, Simon Wolfson. And as a buyer, I used to sit in meetings and talk about that intake margin and talk about a little bit of near and far sourcing. And Simon always used to say at the time, he used to be, listen, what sales are we missing? Not just what we're marking down, but what sales are we missing? And I think that is a real big opportunity for us as an industry, and certainly for us as a business. So using these digital technologies, using the information that's available to us, we have a lot of information from customers. We know what they're buying. We know what they're looking at. There's a lot of algorithm and AI out there that if used in a responsible way, we can use to be a bit more dynamic in what we're doing. We've seen great success with the Kornit machine. We've been using other types of digital technology, the genealogia for denim. Fantastic opportunity. I was in the States a couple of weeks ago looking at how we could get closer to market as the US is a growth area for ASOS. So what kind of sourcing opportunities do we have out there in the US? And seeing some of the, you know, almost duplication of what we've got here in the UK out in the US that we could also put into Turkey. that we maybe also could put into North Africa. So we're getting that proximity of near and onshore sourcing and understanding that there will be a cost. And that's the big bit that, we've got to take that little bit of a leap. And it's not everything, but it is a portion, and it's to be able to understand what products we are going to put there. The final thing I wanted to talk about, because I know we've not got much time, was about the customer and how the consumer has come on a journey over the past few years with the introduction of e-commerce and that ability for speed and what that means. And it can be very wasteful. We know that our returns can be quite high. During the pandemic, our returns dropped dramatically. But that's because the products people were buying were not products that are high returners, dresses, generally speaking, where our consumers are buying several styles, several fits, trying them on, sending them back, keeping what they don't want, keeping what they want. Whereas when they're buying joggers and sweatshirts and loungewear, they're not returning. So it just shows you how people's behavior. So how can we be better in that space? And digital printing for us is, whether it be on a t-shirt or whether it be on product. And it's not just on demand as well. It's not just, well, I want that t-shirt. Can I order that? Yes, we can make one, which is almost the Uber version of what on demand could be. There is that to demand as well. And that's kind of where you are getting to a point where you are buying a certain amount, but then you're able to play with that and not just necessarily place a repeat, but then there might be more options that you can do within that. And we're being less wasteful. And that's one of the biggest inefficiencies in the business. I was talking to my wife the other day about food and about what we buy for a weekly shop, not knowing whether I'm at home or in the office and going to have a lunch or not, and then what we're going to cook and how much we're going to waste. And I just started planning it a bit better and started to buy less at the front, only what was needed, only cook what was required, and start throwing as much away. And it just kind of was like, well, that's exactly the model that we're talking about within our industry. But it just needs a little bit of planning and a little bit of commitment and partnerships. I would say one of the strongest things, and I've been at ASOS now for 9 years, one of the most important parts of my job, which has been within sourcing, but now includes the social and environmental governance part, has been the relationships we've had with suppliers. And that MOQ conversation, again, sorry to keep harking back to Bill, but when we started to plan today, I literally was, well, that's what I would talk about because it's so right and relevant. But that minimum order quantity thing, that's something I've been working with my suppliers on for years now. And it's absolutely right. If you can plan and you can be committed, there is no such thing as a minimum order quantity. There is if you're trying to hit a certain price and a certain intake margin. But if you're talking about being flexible, being agile and relevant for the customer, and that's what it's about today for us, then having that ability to be able to trade and be relevant all the time is very, very important. And from a customer point of view, I don't want to talk about education, but I do think it's important that we need to bring the consumers on this journey with us. I know from the research we've done, not every single customer that says one thing will act the same way. So, like Bill said, don't hold your breath. You could be waiting a long time. But actually, do it because it's the right thing. It's the responsible thing. And if it's done properly, it will absolutely be the most sustainable, ethical, and profitable thing you could do. So I think that's probably all I'd say for now, Chris. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Simon. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So as I said before, don't worry, Love Heroes coming up just after this, but it would be remiss of us. We have another couple of people in the audience that we're going to invite on stage for our panel. We're going to take kind of 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I know we're slightly behind, but I think you'll understand the messaging that we're trying to bring together here. I said this morning when I opened the show that we all need to hold hands and take a giant leap forward together. You've heard some very eloquent words from Bill and from Simon, but I'm going to pose a few questions, and I think the first one I'm going to pose to everybody, and it's very open, is the industry broken? Is the industry broken?
Yeah. Hi. I think it's broken, but I think it's on the right path to come back also. You know?
So talk us a little bit around where you see those right paths for us to take, Sandy.
For me, I'm in between what Bill said, because I've done that for the past 20 years. So, you know, I used to bring in almost 18 tons by air to speed up the process. And then I realized that for retailers, I had to go and invest into machines. So we've worked with Kornit for the past 7 years. And what we started doing was, instead of having inventory already printed, we have blanks which cater to clients, and we have around 83 licenses. And in order to ensure that all release items and stuff like that can be sustained, we started investing in doing our printing in-house, and that has worked really well for us. We can control what we put out in the market, and the lead times are really close. So I think things are getting better.
So fair to say, Sandeep, that it's kind of a complementary offering. So it's the traditional and the digital on demand.
So basically, we're not close to the same system. So we're around 70%, which we're doing in Asia, and we're doing around 30% in France. And the idea is to get it to a 50-50 situation.
Great. Okay. Bill.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would use the word broken. Or if you did, I think you'd have to recognize it's always been, since the days of the Romans selling togas, it's always been broken, right? I don't think it's broken. I think the challenge is that the change, the consumer, the supply chain change, is always ahead of people's ability to deliver on it. The consumer has changed, we have not, right? The supply chain need has changed, we have not. However, for me, that just makes it ultra exciting. It's all there to do. It's all there to fix. I think it's the winners are the people that leapfrog that and actually start to get ahead of the change. So that's the difference.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And Roy, I want to bring you in here a little bit because of your digital AI metaverse kind of element, because I think for us coming from a traditional methodology, that's kind of science fiction in a way, because it's a little bit to Bill's point. We want to understand where the customers and the consumer trends are going. And I think from your perspective that you do at Placebo, can you share a little bit more about what you're seeing about that consumer experience, how the technology is enabling that information and that knowledge?
Yeah, definitely. I think that what's going on right now is that especially younger Gen Z and end of millennials, understand the necessary of digital assets and how they are important. And when we think about it, fashion and metaverse platforms are not that strange from each other, because when we talk, we need to define fashion first. And fashion is actually about playing a character. Today I woke up in the morning, I put on myself garments, I'm playing a character. And then when I'm going into a gaming or a metaverse platform as Decentraland, I am playing a character. So the relation between them are very go together. And I think that what we see right now is that people are actually consuming digital fashion. They want to put it on their avatar. And as well, a physical fashion industry using digital fashion as a marketing tool, as an AR tool, a feeding tool. And I think it's amazing what we see right now, how fashion and technology was not one industry, and today we see them merged to one. And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, so the blurring of the lines between that kind of virtual and real. Yeah.
If I may just
Please.
comment on that, there was a very practical use case recently for me around metaverse. Tommy Hilfiger participated in Metaverse Fashion Week in Decentraland.
We've been there together.
I went into the booth to have a look, was walking around and bumped into some colleagues. And
this is all in the virtual world here, session. I just have to make sure that everybody's on the
virtually.
same.
And my avatar was dressed in what I can only describe as jankiest outfit ever, not cute. And as soon as I walked in there and saw some colleagues, I was like, very quickly realized I need to change my outfit. I want to look how I would represent myself at work. And so I was like, I need to buy wearables, so you instantly kind of see the use case for digital fashion. Totally agree.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so, Sandeep, you do a lot of work with licenses and licensors and stuff like that. Are you seeing that kind of crossover point from where you are at this stage?
Yeah, I think in the future, with the whole print on demand, which is going to come into, we're trying to talk to major gaming licenses and trying to convince them to say that between the person who's created the game and the artwork which goes with it, instead of having 10 different filters, if you can talk to the end customer and we can help in some way in manufacturing, it'll be really cool.
Brilliant. I think it's just fascinating. I think the other thing I was going to ask you, Simon, I think is a little bit about, the all or nothing. We'd spoken about kind of where you are in a journey. It doesn't mean you've got to go either fully on demand or fully traditional. There's a part in the middle there somewhere, I think. You spoke to it a little bit about the to demand piece.
Yeah, I think we've seen or we're seeing on-demand getting more and more, being understood more. But the to-demand for a business like ASOS, where we are being responsible in terms of, buying the right amount at the right time and having that in the right place, I think is probably the step that gets us closer before you get totally to on-demand. It's a journey, and I think this industry needs to hurry up on this journey, because while it's not utilizing the resource it has at its hands, digitization, customer knowledge, then it can't be efficient, and without efficiency is waste. So I think that to-demand piece, which we've shown has worked with yourselves in the UK, has proven the case.
Yeah, for sure. And Sandeep, I think, interesting enough, I think we've partnered, obviously, Cotton Division and Kornit on a fairly major retail that we won't mention at the moment because we're under kind of just about to launch it. But we're partnering with that kind of journey at the moment, where traditional methodology of production was 18 weeks or 20 weeks or something, and you're now breaking that down to deliver demand in about a week.
Literally, yeah. So basically what we've done is we've taken their systems and their processes, and we've arranged to get blanks with their requirements, and the testing and everything's been done. And now we hold the stock in France, and as and when designs come out, we can print and they can see basically what works and what doesn't work, and we can cater to them in about a week or so. Today we print on an average per month between 60 to 70,000 pieces, and the idea is to get to double that in the next year or so.
So I guess that solves a couple of things that I think Bill spoke to about, with his 1 trillion lost revenue. Yeah. If you haven't got it, you can't sell it, methodology. But that predictive kind of finger in the air of what people want to buy in 6 months' time is almost impossible. I think that's where the data comes in, from that meta element, to understand how people are interacting with certain trends or colors or moods or styles. And then ultimately that feeds into a digital on-demand piece. So Bill, I think we touched on briefly about that kind of complementary supply chain piece. Can you just talk a little bit about that a little bit?
Yeah, but I think it's exactly, again, it's as you're describing it, it's what you're not trying to do here, and I'll reiterate it, is replace the big supply chains that you've got. Incredibly effective, incredibly capable. It's the gaps that are missing from the future environment. So this idea of bringing it closer, even to the point where you actually start to bring materials in as opposed to blanks in, because you're actually now able to be responsive, just not a print or a color level, but actually at a style level. And look, anybody that's interested, if you want, you can always talk to Zara. They'll tell you how they work. No one has replicated Zara as much as they share it, because the challenge is not, in this case, the challenge is actually nothing to do with capability. Capability exists. People are willing to do it. Technology exists. It's the culture of the organizations that are preventing people getting at it. So it's about layering in this complementary part. And again, just even this mindset of that this item could be made offshore, nearshore, and onshore. That in itself is just such a foreign concept to people. It's that item is made there at this cost and always will be.
Sure. So I think, Sasha, you've done some amazing work within PVH on understanding that cost argument. We hear so often in our discussions, it's never going to be, you can never compete on cost, and it's always going to. What would you say to that kind of area?
Yeah, so we've been working on onshoring for quite a while, and as part of that have had to kind of validate through some cost modeling, where are the additional costs and how does that work out in the end? And in our cost modeling, you at least come out 200 basis points in the plus if you utilize a network model. So you're using your existing model for anything predictable, and you're utilizing your new onshore on-demand models for anything more unpredictable. And if we think about what businesses are tasked to do, they are tasked to make money, right? That's what most businesses are here to do. Service someone with something for money. So shareholders don't wake up and say, well, what did buyer A pay for, item X? Was it 175 or was it 205? Because they're looking at profitability of the company. And so that's what we have to start thinking about when we think about this network model. Yes, your initial cost will be higher, but with the elimination of waste, and therefore waste in terms of the amount of money you're wasting, as well as waste you're creating in the system, you can come out much more profitable in the end. So it is one of those frustrating conversations when you hear at first. But of course, we have a lot of facts.
So it's the broader view, it's the joined up thinking, it's the end-to-end element, it's the lack of inventory, it's the lack of warehousing costs, it's the lack of cash tied up for weeks and months. It's the utilization of natural resources, which ends up, unfortunately, at both ends. It goes back to where it came from, but unfortunately it goes in a state that isn't actually able to be recycled because of some of the production methodologies, etc. So that's fascinating. I want to kind of understand a little bit also from you, Rory, a little bit around that digital experience that you're working with maybe other brands, or how are you enabling that to happen in a physical form as well as in a digital form?
Most of the time when we actually working, because we collaborate a lot with physical fashion brands, and I think these collaborations are so interesting because the perspective are so different. To be able to make a digital fashion, you need to understand 3D. It's like to go to someone and tell him, make me a dress without any knowledge in pattern making or sewing. So you need to understand how to create digital fashion to be able to create digital fashion, and how to create it for a specific platforms as well, because Decentraland, for example, is a very specific platform. So you need to understand that. And I think the discussions around the garment, how it can be like physical and digital in the same time, and what actually the customer want when he buy digital, and what does he want when he want physical garment, are so interesting.
Yeah.
So every project is so different from the other one. Every garment is so different from the other one, and it's a journey to work with digital fashion today.
So it really is virtual driving physical and physical driving virtual, which is another angle and another community and a whole kind of new experience.
Definitely, and especially when fashion today is content. People buying today garments just to take a picture.
Sure.
When we're talking about sustainability, and then we tell them, you know what? Maybe we can create the content for you using digital fashion without you actually buying the physical garment, and by that we will be a little bit more environmentally friendly.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. I think so.
I think another big part of that, to your point, looking at digital fashion and how do we kind of think about that in the physical world, a lot of what we're seeing happen in the metaverse today, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is user-generated content, so whether that's games or wearables. And so, again, you have to have reactiveness. If you're going to, say, for example, there's a gamer, some Gen Z gamer who's hanging out in whatever, Roblox, and they're going to meet up with their friends. They want to wear the same cool t-shirt their avatar wears to a party that weekend.
Sure.
How do we do that in the physical world? And so you need to have these reactive capabilities to be able to do that. So, which
is really an audience of one in that sense. So, which is clearly where the digital play comes in, as we've discussed. So, I'm conscious of time, and I know that this is interesting because everybody's still very with us, which is great, probably because we locked the door. But I would like to just ask a question. If anybody has any questions for our distinguished panel, I know it's been very thought-provoking, but if there is anybody that has anything that they'd like to ask that stimulated any thoughts or questions, you'd be most welcome. I'm trying to see with the lights. I have a question from down the front here. Can we get a mic? Can I borrow your microphone, son? Here we go. Thank you.
So thank you for this great panel talk. Just one question to the whole group. What do you think, where is the level of knowledge and talents in these countries where we want to have this onshoring concepts? Do you think there is enough expertise to realize these types of concepts?
Thank you. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll take so I'm going to flip that question to, I was asked that question 30 years ago when I was proposing Marks and Spencer's move production to China. And the question was, well, is there anybody in China who actually knows how to make anything? There's no technology there. It's a sweatshop at best. So I think everything has a solution to it. I think talent can be repositioned. I can reposition any talent I want anywhere in the world at a cost. I can move it. So talent is absolutely movable where it's necessary. And I think more so today, you can bring talent up very, very quickly. There are techniques to actually do that, how you bring talent up. So I think the answer is yes, talent is, and we know that because it's already happening. So number one, and where there may be a lack of or a gap in talent, I think that can be addressed. That will be addressed faster than our ability to bring people on board to stand this up.
Simon?
Just to add to that, I mean, immediately speaking, there is a lack. You know, if we wanted to do in the UK, there is certainly, you know, you can make shoes, you can make tailoring, and other products that are perhaps not as readily known or available from a price point of view. So it's going to need a commitment to get that. So there is a skill level, there is technology that can support it. So a lot of the things that we used to do in the UK would probably be too inefficient again to recreate. So using the new technologies, denim's a great example with the Jean Lodier. That could be brought back. That could be something that can be done at scale in the UK. But it does need an investment. You are going to need to work to rebuild them supplies and set them back up again and really commit to doing it. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to work.
Great, thank you. I'm going to stop it there. However much I'd like to continue the discussion, we do have the press conference coming up in about 35, 40 minutes. We have Love Hero. Joshua Scaccieri is going to present his Love Hero collection, which I can tell you has all been produced using Kornit technology. To your question about skill sets, I can tell you the Kornit technology is very easy to run. It doesn't take long to get running. I think Sandeep will talk about that, just to let you know. But I think I just want you to put your hands together, please, for our wonderful team. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. I think it's a real testament that you believe that change needs to happen, but it needs to happen together. And I think that collaboration and the conversations we're having will continue. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.